Can I ask everyone to take their seats, please? Thank you, everyone. If I could have you in your seats, that'd be great. Councillors and visitors, please remember to switch your electronic devices to silent. And I'd like to welcome those couple of people in the gallery. Welcome along tonight. And to those members at home or those viewers at home, welcome along. I'll ask you all to please be upstanding and we'll start with the opening prayer. Deputy Mayor Proud, could you please read out the opening prayer?
Almighty God, we ask you to guide us in all our discussions, to show goodness, honesty, understanding and wisdom in all that we undertake to do. May we respect each other's views at all times, and we ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Councillor Criado, could you please read out the acknowledgement of country?
On behalf of councillors, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, on which this meeting is taking place, and show our respect for elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you. You can all take your seats. Without prior approval, any recording of this meeting is prohibited. No action should be taken on any resolution of council prior to written advice from the city being received. That brings us to item 1, which is the official opening. And ladies and gentlemen, I declare the council meeting of the 21st of February 2023 open at 6:31 p.m. Item 2, attendance and apologies. I have received an apologies from Councillor Bianca Sandri. 3, approved leave of absence. I have nil. 4, disclosure of interest. There was no disclosures at the P&D committee meeting. Tonight for the council meeting, is there any disclosures councillors would like to declare early on? No disclosures noted. We'll keep an eye on that during the evening. Item 5, petitions. We do have some. And I'll start by 5.1. Councillor Criado, would you like to table your petition on Make Balga Bike Friendly, please?
Yes, please. Thank you. The below e-petition contains 20 verified signatures. We, the undersigned, do respectfully request that the council consider the construction of a public access way across Wanneroo Road to link Balga and Hammersley without cyclists or pedestrians needing to access either the Reed Highway or Beach Road intersections. Work with the Public Transport Authority to construct a purpose-built bike storage facility at Mirrabooka Bus Station to encourage cycling to our local public transport hub. And 3, immediately construct additional bike parking facilities at public reserves in Balga, including at Barry Britton Reserve, which is the home to Balga Football Club, Camberwell Reserve opposite Balga Community Centre, Celebration Park, Northern Redbacks Football Club, and Princess Wallington Reserve, Balga Soccer Club and Balga Cricket Club.
Thank you. And Councillor Criado, I believe you have another matter as well?
So this is a submission which is a request to install a sauna at the Sterling Leisure Centre, Leisure Park, Balga. The below submission contains 265 signatures. Members of the Sterling Leisure Centre, Leisure Park, Balga Gym wish to petition the City of Stirling for the installation of a sauna in order to improve their health and fitness. Currently, medical studies show that using a sauna on a regular basis provides the following benefits: improves cardiovascular function, regulates blood pressure, reduces stress, increases workout recovery, provides the advantage of intense exercise without the effort, and stimulates autophagy, which is known as the ability of the body to self-heal. Thank you.
I think we'll have to check that one out.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other petitions to be tabled, councillors? If not, we'll ask for a mover and a seconder to accept those petitions, please. Move Councillor Hatton, seconded Councillor Migdal. Just a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 6, responses from previous questions from members of the public taken on notice, and all PQT's responses from the last council meeting were published in the minutes of that meeting. It now brings us to public question time. And the first one I'll ask forward, Mr Mitchell, if you'd like to come forward, please. Good evening, and if you start by turning that microphone on, that's great. And your
Good
name
evening,
and
Mayor. Robert Mitchell, Karrinyup. Good evening, councillors, council officers and fellow members of the public. I have three questions. Well, three questions, two questions, and one is information I'm going to hand to the council. My first question relates to local government insurance. This, over quite a number of years, has been a thing that I've held dearly in relation to trying to find out the facts in relation to what's legal and what's not. So I've asked now, please provide written proof of a trust deed for the purchase of local government insurance over regulated amount listed and maintained within the Local Government Act. Also provide proof of ownership details, City of Stirling and other local governments of Western Australia and Local Government Association, and how this trust deed operates effectively and legally, allowing these large insurance transactions to take place outside the tender process.
Thank you, Mr Mitchell, and we'll provide you that response in writing.
Thank you, Mayor. My next question relates to the Edith Cowan University. Yesterday I heard that they are progressing with establishing in the CBD their campus and closing the one at Mount Lawley. Some time ago there was in the paper mention that the City of Stirling would like to take over the current Performing Arts Centre there and administer it. So I've asked here, as the Edith Cowan University intend moving its Mount Lawley campus into the Perth CBD, now officially mentioned, with the advent of the Performing Arts Study Group relocating from their current theatre building, also does this council intend to vie for the theatre management against any, as the theatre arts movement of the government, to allocate the property to the Mount Lawley College?
Thank you for that question, Mr Mitchell. Look, the short answer is no. There's no vying for it. I guess when it first came up as a potential to move, we did approach the minister.
Thank you, Mayor, as long as that's recorded.
Yep.
Now, the next one is in relation to a study that I read, and I see last week that a lot of councils went to the West Australian Government Association in relation to the disappearing density of trees in the metropolitan area. What I've sent you there is a study in Portland, Oregon in America, from the time they planted trees there till 20 years later. It's an intensive study, and it's not on the actual climate matters with trees. It's relating to human health, and I hope people that read it get a good understanding of what they're saying there.
Thank you for that, Mr Mitchell. We'll ensure that all councillors get a copy of that.
Thank you.
Peter Ellis, if you'd like to come forward, please. Thank you, Mr Ellis.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors, staff and fellow ratepayers. Happy New Year. Can you please advise how many times has the council paid for Mr S. Jardine to travel to the USA for conferences while fully paid his salary since 2007?
We can certainly respond to you in writing, noting that it is
Fantastic.
part of his contract.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm aware of that, and somebody come out the winner in that one. Why has the council paid 7 nights for Mr Jardine's accommodation in April 2023 when the conference is actually for 4 days and 5 nights?
So, yeah, it's policy, but Mr Blanchard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question, Mr Ellis. The city's policy allows for international travel for 2 days prior to the conference and 1 day afterwards.
Fantastic. Lovely sightseeing that the ratepayers are paying for. Sorry, that's statement. Can you please advise of any tangible benefits to the ratepayers, Hamersley, for Mr Jardine's trips
Yes,
to
and
America?
Yes, if you go on the city's website, you'll be able to see a full copy of the report, and we're quite comfortable we're getting good value for money, Mr Ellis.
I'm very pleased. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Alicia Jack.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff.
What's your name and suburb?
Yep, sorry, just
That's
getting
right.
to that. Leisha Jack Karranup, thank you. I've got two questions pertaining to the Mount Lawley Golf Club tree removal and also another question. So I just wanted to say beforehand, I just want to make it very clear when I'm talking about the Arbor Carbon work that they did for the Mount Lawley Golf Club, that their work is highly acknowledged to be the highest possible quality, and there's absolutely no doubt about their work. It's not them I'm concerned about.
Thank you.
Okay. Question number one. Are you, Mr Mayor, and councillors aware that the Mount Lawley Golf Club did remove the old version of the Arbor Carbon survey data that I was talking about at the last meeting and replaced it with the version that does include GPS locations of the trees? Thank you very much. But they have removed the Arbor Carbon report as well, and all other draft plans and documents from public view. Only members who log into the members portal can see them. Should the public be able to see what they are proposing with the trees and vegetation on that public A-class reserve?
I can perhaps get Mr Murphy to comment, but I would suggest that's a matter to us, the club. I wouldn't think that any of our... I understand what you're asking, but it's...
North Beach Football Club, all of their plans and the plans for the ovals was all available for the public to see.
Yeah, that's public space, so I think it's quite a bit different. So that I'll
It is
even
a
get
public
Mr.
open
I can
space?
see Mr Morellini nodding, so I might even go
Okay.
over that way if you're happy to comment
Sure.
on the land.
Through the chair, the agreement, they're on a ground lease agreement, which is very different to public open space for community sporting clubs,
Yep.
and the management of that land and the buildings associated is a different arrangement than you would have otherwise on a public open space.
And Miss Jack, if you'd like us to ask the club to see if they will put it back up in the public realm, I'm happy to do that for you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr Mayor, as you and councillors would be aware, the city pays for a contractor to fly over the city with aerial imaging cameras and remote sensing cameras to take imagery to assess the vegetation loss and gain and at different height levels of vegetation and land surface temperature across the city every year. Could the city please provide me with the last 5 years of imaging that shows the canopy cover and different canopy heights for the city, the Mount Lawley Golf Club site over the past 5 years, including the heat data,
Thank you for that question.
land surface temperature?
Thank you for that question. We'll have to take that on notice and respond to you in writing with that one, but if
Yeah.
it's available and publicly available, I'm sure we can.
Yeah, you've got it. Yep, okay. Ratepayers pay for it. Okay, so Mr Mayor, at the Walga Urban Forest Conference, you gave a talk and said something like, so we put in place a register. We're talking about you put in place, or the city put in place a tree register or some sort of a register. It requires something to go on the title. People can protect a tree on private property, protect it in perpetuity, but we haven't had any takers. So as the significant tree register or the voluntary protected tree register, as the city calls it, is still with the Department of Planning, waiting for it to be approved in the local scheme, were you talking about the city's retained significant tree list? If so, where was that advertised to the public? And can any property owner use it, or only if they are developing?
Thank you. No, I was specifically talking about the tree register during that discussion. My comments were framed, I think, in the context of it. I talked about during the process of advertising for that, there was minimal take-up or minimal interest in it. But since we've done it, there's been no inquiries received from the city to ask if they can register a tree. And I did clarify that at the conference and talk that it wasn't to say there won't be in the future, but it is very much just to show that there is a significant community interest when we talk about these things, but when it comes to actually putting pen to paper, it's not that easy.
But you said we put in place a register and people can protect a tree on private property, protected in perpetuity, but we haven't had any takers.
Yes.
Any takers, and there's two on, but there is also, okay, I'll have to get back to you. I can't debate here, but it's very confusing. I didn't know there were two. There is a retained tree list that is live on the website. I don't know how to get into it, but it's there.
I can get an explanation for
Yeah,
you,
please.
Mr. Roddick.
Yes, Mr. Roddick. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Jack. As part of our planning scheme, there is a provision in the scheme that allows variations to development standards should someone retain a significant tree. It was either last year or late the year before in 2021 where council, as part of our consideration of what we can do to incentivise residents, developers to retain trees on site, discussions was held about the provision of that scheme, and one of the elected members suggested that we should have a register on the website for those applicants who have gone down that pathway and have requested, I guess, consideration of development standard variations due to the retention of a tree. The Mayor is correct in that that register does not have any...
Two on it. It's called a retained significant tree list on your development trees and development site page.
So maybe if we can take this one offline with you, Ms. Jack, and we'll get those details off you and we'll follow them up. Happy to follow them up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We'll now move on to item 8, application of leave of absence. Councillors, are there any applications? If not, I'll go to item 9, confirmation minutes. And can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 7th of February 2023? Moved Councillor Migdale, seconded Councillor Perkov. And just a show of hands, if we can, please, councillors. Thank you. All those in favour and against? So that is all councillors. Councillor Ree is voting against the minutes. Item 10, announcements by the presiding member. I do just quickly have one. I just wanted to mention, for those who were fortunate enough to be with us last night, it was a wonderful evening where we announced the 10th Honorary Freeman of the City, David Boothman. And I would just like to publicly thank all the team that were involved. I know the governance team played a big part in ensuring in a fairly tight timeline that was all turned around. Also to Catherine Redden, I know she'll be watching at home, but did a wonderful job in coordinating a lot of the behind the scenes to make sure that event was a really fantastic event. I'd also just like to thank Lisa Matrasic and David Michael, MLA, who attended and talked on behalf of David. I thought they did a wonderful job and really made the evening. So wonderful evening and a fantastic outcome for the city. I'll now move on to item 11, which is unresolved business from previous meetings. I have nil. And 12, now to reports and recommendations from committees. Councillors, there are 2 items in the planning and development that are... try that again. that are about leases and will need to go behind closed doors. So given that, if we ignore those and talk about 12.1 DS1 to DS3, are there any of those that are required to be pulled out? Councillor Ree?
12.1 DS2 on page 38, please.
Thank you. Are there any others? Councillor Migdale?
12.1, 8.1.
And so we will deal with those
Oh, at
afterwards.
the confidential.
Yeah, I think if we just separate those, we'll deal with those as confidential because the debate will involve the leases and the lease terms. So given that, I'll now go to item 12.1 DS2 to start with. Proposed submission draft position statement on childcare. Councillor Migdale is chair of that committee, if you'd like to move a motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the committee's or the officer's recommendation, committee's recommendation.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Ferrante. And Councillor Ree, are you opposed or do you have a question? Thank you. So I'll go to you, Councillor Migdale, if you'd like to open debate.
I'll reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Ferrante.
And nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ree.
Thank you. My first question is, was there any hurry for us to endorse this at this particular moment in time when we've gone out to public submissions for childcare centres and that report hasn't come to council?
Thank you. Mr Rodich?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Councillor Ree, the department had a cut-off date, and we require, as part of this report, we needed an extension to that, so there was a cut-off date for submissions on the policy statement.
Councillor Ree?
Thank you. On page 52, oops, just right here, 52, it's strange that that in here they've actually made the comment about local planning schemes, but they don't sit there and make it hard that the DAPs can't change it, and also that we address our local planning schemes to make sure that it's not in a good area. And if we go down to, that's 5.2 and 5.5, when we talk about the amenity of the area, which is what is at holding to most people, especially when a residential area, they end up with a great big two-storey childcare centre with traffic and all sorts of issues. I don't understand why we haven't added to that to make it that they can't change it, make it less of a loophole than what it's written. And I am aware that it's only a draft position statement, but I would have thought they've had draft position statements before, and on some issues we've come out quite strongly. In here, we haven't. Could I ask why?
Mr Rodich?
Thanks, Councillor. As you'd see, Councillor, in the report, we have commented that this draft position statement is largely consistent with our draft planning policy, which is currently out for advertising, or has now closed, and that will be considered by Council at the next Planning Development Committee. So this position statement, I guess, provides guidelines for local governments to prepare scheme amendments, should they require, or local planning policies, and we did provide comment when we actually wrote our draft childcare centres policy a few months back, and we did address that this draft statement was consistent with what we're proposing. So this is just a general guide in terms of a decision maker. Decision maker would look at the local planning policy and any provisions of the scheme in their decision.
Councillor?
My point is that while this is only a guide, it's a loophole, and we know that from the DAPs, and we know that the whole point is, it used to be a lot more black and white. You can either have it or you can't. Now it's councillors are losing any autonomy to make a comment. The public feel that they're vulnerable. They don't get to make a comment. There's no three-party appeal right. So this is a great opportunity in which to tighten it up for everybody across the state so people know where they stand. I don't understand why we aren't coming out stronger when we look at some of the issues that have occurred that with the building of these childcare centres. And I mean, yes, we might say we're pro childcare centres in some ways, but not in the wrong place, you know. And I just don't feel that this is strong enough on our position as a council. And I think it's not sending a message back to council, back to state government. And that's all I'll make.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this? If not, Councillor Farrelly.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I have been listening to Councillor Ree's statement, and I do concur with some of the aspects she's referring to, whereby, and can I refer to the fact I'm a member of JDAP, because where there has been a leniency of approvals because it's not clearly detailed as a black or white situation. There have been some which are in residential areas on busy roads that have been approved, which would cause problems in the interior roads which are not used to that through traffic. And I think the clarity of the decision needs to be improved so that the JDAP has guidelines, clear guidelines to follow. Otherwise, it does become a bit grey. And I think anything that's grey for JDAP, you can't expect professional people to take a stance that's going to be seen to be not verified or backed up in the regulations. It is too difficult for a professional person to be given that responsibility in terms of they're employed elsewhere. They have to have clear black and white guidelines on some of these aspects. And and therefore I'm not making comments about the professionalism or anything. I'm really saying if you have strict guidelines, you get what you're wanting. You might get things that you don't expect, but you probably don't get the things you don't want, if I can put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this one? No, I'll go to Councillor Migdale to close.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I would just like, through you, please, to ask Mr. Rodich to comment, if I may, on the parameters of childcare centres and what is approvable and not approvable in terms of what falls into the remit of local governments as opposed to the framework set out by the state government, please.
Thank you. I'll allow this one for a quick question, but then you are closing. Mr. Rodich.
Thanks, Councillor Migdale. As part of an assessment of a childcare premises, the city would look to its childcare centres local planning policy and the scheme for, I guess, guidance in terms of considering an application. The comments made by, I guess, Councillor Farrelly and Councillor Reid tonight are probably more appropriately addressed through consideration of the childcare premises policy, which we're bringing back to council next month. That's been through advertising. This draft position statement just provides a general guidance for council to provide a planning policy and trying to get some consistency across the state. But it's your local planning policy where you need to, I guess, put certain requirements in which the council see fit. Now, we went through that process. Remember, we tightened the policy up in terms of its location criteria and also amenity impacts in the local area where the childcare premises could be located. So those provisions have been provided. Council was satisfied with those previously when it went out for advertising, and I'm sure we'll have that discussion through the next council meeting.
Councillor Migdale.
Thank you. And just prior, or rather in closing, I would, through you, Mr. Mayor, like to thank officers who were responsible for the process for reviewing this. I think that the draft position statement is an excellent document, and I certainly support it, as did committee unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And with that, it closes debate. So item 12.1 DS2, I can put it to the electronic vote. I'll still see it. Sorry, I've lost screens, so I'm just trying to work it out. All right, let's go to the vote. We'll see how we go. Thank you, councillors. That is carried, and the vote is 13 to 1 with, I'm guessing it's Councillor Reid voting against. Councillors, I will now go to the balance of the reports that aren't behind closed doors. So what we're currently voting on block is 12.1 DS1 and 12.1 DS3. Councillor Migdale, as chair of the committee, if you could put those remaining items.
Balance of reports, please.
Thank you. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Proud. And we'll go to the vote on those, please, councillors. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Carried. Those members. It's one of those nights. To the viewers at home, please note that those two remaining items have now been put on block. Item 12.1 and 12.1 will be dealt with later in the meeting behind closed doors as they involve lease terms. We shall now move on to the direct to council item, starting with 13.1, which is a statutory budget review. Absolute majority vote is required for this one. It's on page 115. Councillor, do I have a mover of a motion, please? Councillor Lagan, you're moving.
Officer's recommendation, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hatton. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Is it just a question? Yep, I'm happy. Unless anyone is opposed, then Councillor Reid, I'll allow a question on that before we put it to the vote.
Just in reference to page 117 with the reserve movements, going from one reserve fund to another, I didn't read it anywhere, but I might have missed it, don't we require approval from the Minister, and isn't it supposed to be written out properly if we take it from a reserve to what we're putting in it exactly?
Thank you. Ms Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Reid. With regards to the reserves, Council obviously determine the use of the reserves and equally will determine the transfers. So Tamala Park Regional Council was dealt with when we adopted the budget in 22-23. So this is just following through in terms of what Council's already adopted.
Thank you. So we're happy with that, Councillor Reid. That's the answer. So if there's no one opposed, I will put that to the vote. Councillors? Thank you, councillors, and that is unanimous. Item 13.2, the annual report for consideration. Absolute majority vote is required on this one. Councillors, do I have a mover of a motion? Move Councillor Migdal. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kristovich. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you, councillors. I will put that to the vote. I've just got one to go. Thank you. And that motion is carried with Councillor Reid voting against the annual report. Item 13.3, the 2023 National Conference for Australian Local Government Women's Association. Do I have a mover of a motion? Councillor Migdal.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Olo, you're seconding. Is there anyone opposed? Waiting. No one opposed. I will put that one to the vote. Yeah. Is it a conflict? That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to item 14, which is notice of motion for consideration. First one of those is 14.1. It's a proposed notice of motion from Councillor Migdal. Councillor Migdal, your motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the notice of motion on page 127, please.
Thank you. And can you just read that one out? Just with these proposed, just so we...
Just give me 1 second. Apologies. I had it on the right page and now it's bounced off. Here we go. That a report be presented to Council considering that the City mark the date of the coronation of King Charles III on the 6th of May 2023 by holding a high tea at the City and renaming a room in the City in honour of Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II. I so move. Would you like reasoning or no?
No, happy with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And seconded Councillor Reid. And is anyone opposed? And I will put that. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 14.2, a proposed notice of motion from Councillor Bianca Sandri on the playground policy review. Councillor Lagan.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 129 of the agenda.
Thank you. And seconded Councillor Migdal. Is there anyone opposed to that one? If not, I will put that one to the vote. And I've just got one more. I'm not sure who it is, though. That's it. And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I'll go to item 14.3, proposed notice of motion from Councillor Perkoff on the Rickman Delaunay Reserve. Don't act surprised, councillor. It's your motion. If you'd like to stand up.
I would very much so, yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
You have to read it
So
out.
stand up and tell us what your motion is. Come on, you've been around for a couple of years. The button on the right. Come on, we'll talk you through it.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I know that I'm getting throttled. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That a report be presented to Council by July 2023 on future improvements to Rickman Delaunay Reserve North, including removal of the east-west path connecting and installation of other connecting pathways to surrounding streets to create a loop circuit around the reserve and thereby increase opportunity for organised sport use.
Thank you. Councillor Hatton, are you seconding that? Yep. We have to do a bit of practice with you two, aren't we? Is there anyone opposed there? If not, I'll put it to the vote. Thank you. That is unanimous, councillors. We have item 14.4, proposed notice of motion from Councillor Ree.
That a report be presented to the Planning and Development Committee meeting to be held 8th of August 2023 regarding the option to amend the standard community and sporting club leases and licences to include the servicing and repair of drink fountains as part of the city's annual maintenance program. This report would follow an elected members' workshop on leases and licensing in July 23, and this came about because of the issues raised at the information session by club people who were told that it was and then it wasn't.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Deputy Mayor Proud has seconded that. Is anyone opposed? Any question?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I note that in the notice of motion it doesn't include a potential option with the Water Corp to provide drinking fountains and maintain them. I'm wondering if we could somehow incorporate that either into the notice of motion.
I don't think it needs to be. I'm comfortable
Okay.
that, I think Councillor Ree is just asking for options. I think she'd be quite happy even if it doesn't have to be included in the leases. She just wants the water fountain sorted.
Yeah.
So I think that can be taken on board by officers. So if there's no one opposed, I'll put that one to the vote. We're just missing one. Someone, who is it? Councillor Olo, please. That's it, that's unanimous. Thanks, councillors. Item 14.5, proposed notice of motion from Councillor Lagan, a community battery.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the motion on page 135 and just quickly comment on the details part 2, that during the federal election, the Labor government did commit to a battery in Dianella, and I look forward to this progressing.
Thank you. Is there a second for this motion? Councillor Ferrante. And is anyone opposed? You can ask a question.
This was raised before when we discussed it a couple of years ago when we looked at our strategic plan with regard to renewable energy. I'm just wondering why it should only be Dianella.
That'll come out in the motion, Councillor Ree. So the reason for this is Councillor Lagan just said this is in a direct response to a government funding that was specifically for Dianella. So it was to make sure that that process is
Just to clarify, Mr Mayor, there were 3 suburbs chosen in Western Australia. Dianella was one of them.
Yes. So that's why it's specifically Dianella. If there's no one opposed, I'll put that one to the vote. Thanks, councillors. That's unanimous. And lastly, we have item 14.6, proposed notice of motion from Councillor Felicity Farrelly on the Brighton Beach access path.
As given on page 137 of the agenda, thank you, Mr Mayor, I should say first, that retrospective public consultation on the closure of the Brighton Beach access path is carried out, and a subsequent report be presented in March 2023 to Council in response to public concern about the recent closure. The report is to contain the results of the public consultation, the rationale for closing the path, and options to keep the path open. Thank you.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Kristovich. Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that one to the vote. Okay. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Thanks, councillors. I'll now go on to item 15, notice of motion for consideration at the next meeting. Councillors, do you have any proposed notice of motions that you'd like to raise now? Councillor Ree?
That it should be up. Well, it's very little. The Minister of Local Government has now identified the legislation he will prioritise, and we ask that the consideration that he considers, including the superannuation section within these priorities, and ask the Mayor to write to him accordingly. The reason is that addressing the superannuation for elected members in the first round of legislated reforms puts the role of councillors in line with other government-based meeting allowances and is irrelevant for councillors for whom council is their only source of income, especially women, which will assist in promoting gender equality and supports responsible planning for all councillors and financial wellbeing.
Thanks, councillor. Is there any other noms? Councillor Farrelly?
This refers back to 5th of July 2022, but it has, I think, relevance now. It refers to the normalisation and the beach hubs in Scarborough. So one, that the council and the community be informed on the 2 proposed beach hub sites and who will be responsible for any approvals or developments, taking into account the recent statements from, in terms of the Minister for Local Government being involved. That 2, the Scarborough Foreshore Beach Hub arrangements between Development WA, the Minister for Local Government and the proponent be made public and presented to Council for review. 3, that the city seeks feedback by a community consultation process for the 2 areas, and that a report is presented to Council prior to any further action.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I've got a rationale that I can put.
Sure,
with
and
it.
if you can just make sure, I don't know if governments have a copy in writing of
Yes,
that. If
yeah.
you can make sure they have the copy in writing, that'd be good. Anyone else? If not, we will move on to item 16, questions by members of which due notice has been given. I have nil. Item 17, new business of an urgent nature. You'll receive an email today regarding an MRC alternative member. So item 17.1, do I have a mover of a motion, councillors? Councillor Olo, your motion? Just stand. Hello? Thanks. If you can just stand up and use the mic. No, that's all right. Hey, Councillor Perkoff's been here for about 6 years and he got it wrong, so that's all right.
I move the recommendation for Councillor...
The officer's recommendation?
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
And seconded Councillor Hatton.
Sorry.
Is there anyone opposed? If not, I'll put that one to the vote. That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll now go to matters behind closed doors. Councillor, can I have a mover to go behind closed doors to deal with the leases? Move Councillor Perkoff, seconded Deputy Mayor Proud, and just a show of hands to go behind closed doors, and that is unanimous. To those viewers at home, we bid you good night. These are the last items on the agenda, so the live stream won't restart. Councillors, that does bring us to the end of the meeting. Item 19.
I didn't get to declare an interest prior, but
Sure.
I did send it up to the staff. That was 13.3 and 12.1, both are impartial.
Thank you. You better do the paperwork for that. I think. Well, you've got to be careful, councillors. You not think you're meant to put interest in after they've gone through. Yeah, well, councillors, I suggest the meeting is getting closed, so I suggest you just put it in writing and make sure it's on record that you did at the end of the meeting. I don't know how that works. But I'm going to item 19, which is closure, and I declare the meeting closed at page 139. What did I say? 139.
Two nights in a row.
That's what happens. And it's only Tuesday. I declare the meeting closed at 7:41. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
Mr. Mayor, you should have used your glasses, mate.
Yes.
Your glasses.
I knew that was coming.